When my parents found out my savings were frozen, they paid my apartment manager $1,500 to change the locks before I got home. Mom smiled, "Homelessness will make you obedient." Dad added, "Concrete floors raise better children." I bought my own house a week later. 1 minute after, Mom started crying. 3 minutes later, Dad shouted, "What did you do?" The garbage bags were on the curb when the headlights hit them. 3 black bags slumped against the fire hydrant like drunks waiting for a bus. My clothes were in the first one. My shoes were in the second. The third one had my books, my winter coat, and the framed photo of my grandmother that used to sit on the nightstand. The bags were tied loosely at the top, and rain from the afternoon had pooled in the folds, soaking through the plastic into everything underneath. A sleeve from my work blazer was hanging out of the first bag, dragging on the wet concrete, and the blazer was the one I had worn to my first closing at Lakewood Title. The one Maxine told me looked professional. It was soaking up gutter water on a Monday night. My apartment key did not work. The lock had been replaced. New brass, still shiny, still smelling like the hardware store bag it came out of. The deadbolt above it was new too. 2 locks. Someone had paid for 2. Everything I owned was on that curb or behind that door. That is the part that stopped my breathing. Not the bags, not the locks. Not the rain turning my work blazer into a rag. Everything. 4 years of building a life on my own, reduced to garbage bags and a brass deadbolt. And across town, on a shelf in my parents' hallway, sat the only object that mattered more than anything behind that door. A small hand-painted ceramic cottage, no bigger than a coffee mug, that my grandmother Clara gave me when I was 9 years old. She placed it in my hands on her back porch, her fingers wrapped around mine, and said, "One day you will have your own walls, Ivy, and nobody gets to take the key." Clara died 4 years later. The cancer took her the way it takes grandmothers, slowly and then all at once, and the last thing she said to me was, "Did you keep the little house?" The ceramic house had sat on that hallway shelf my entire childhood. When I moved to Mill Street 4 years ago, I left it there. Because I thought I would still be coming home for Sunday dinners. Because I thought leaving something behind meant I had not fully left. Because some part of me still believed the shelf was safe. Now the shelf was in a house owned by people who had just put my clothes in garbage bags. And the ceramic house was the only piece of Clara still left in the world. Sal Benedetto, the building manager, answered his phone on the 4th ring. His voice had the flat tone of a man who knew exactly why someone was calling. "Sal, my locks have been changed. My belongings are on the sidewalk. Your parents came in this afternoon, Ivy. Your father said you were being evicted for non-payment. He had the paperwork. My rent is current. I have the receipts. You did not verify?" Silence, then. "They paid me $1,500 in cash, Ivy. They said it was a family emergency. You changed the locks on a paying tenant without a court order because someone handed you cash? I thought it was a family thing." It was, and you are going to hear from my attorney about it. The phone went dead. My legs carried me back to the curb. The rain was still falling. The bags were still there. And across town, on a hallway shelf in a house I was no longer welcome in, my grandmother's ceramic cottage was sitting in the dark. My mother's words arrived by text 14 minutes later. The screen said, "Homelessness will make you obedient." My father's came 2 minutes after that. "Concrete floors raise better children." 2 texts. No phone call. No explanation. They did not even have the decency to say it to my face. They typed it with their thumbs and hit send, the way you cancel a subscription. That was a Monday. By the following Monday, I owned a house. And when my mother saw the deed, she cried. And when my father read it, he shouted 3 words that echoed off the kitchen tile of a home he was about to lose. But the road between those 2 Mondays is the real story. If you are new here, welcome to Karma Unfolded. Hit subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because this story is not about a locked door. This is about a woman whose parents stole over $23,000 from her savings account, bribed a building manager, and called it family values, and the woman who bought a house with money they never knew existed. My name does not matter, but my job does. Senior escrow officer at Lakewood Title and Escrow. My boss, Maxine Orozco, started the company 11 years ago with a folding table and a fax machine. Now Lakewood handles 40 to 60 closings a month across 3 counties. My job is to sit at the center of every real estate transaction and make sure the money goes where it is supposed to go. Title searches, lien checks, fund disbursements, deed recordings. Every dollar, every document, every signature crosses my desk before a house changes hands. That profession is the reason my parents lost. When I was 16, my father Frank opened a joint savings account at First National Credit Union. My name was on it. His name was on it. My mother Denise's name was on it. Frank said it was for my future. He said it was where responsible adults put their money. He said he was teaching me discipline. What he was teaching me was access. Because a joint account means every name on it can deposit, withdraw, and place holds. I did not understand that at 16. I understood it at 28, sitting on Maxine's guest bed with wet shoes and a dead phone, staring at a banking app that said, "Account activity suspended. Contact your financial institution." But before I tell you about that night, let me tell you about the family I was not supposed to leave. Frank Caldwell ran a factory floor for 22 years. He supervised 30 workers who bolted transmission casings onto an assembly line, and he ran his home the same way. Schedules posted on the fridge, curfews enforced to the minute. Dinner at 6:15, not 6:14, not 6:16. Lights out at 10. If you disagreed with Frank, you were not disagreeing. You were insubordinate. And insubordination in the Caldwell house had consequences. Grounding, silent treatment. Withholding, the cold shoulder that could last a week, during which Frank would speak to everyone in the room except the child who had stepped out of line. Denise was not the enforcer. Denise was the interpreter. She would come to your room after Frank's verdict and say, "Your father loves you. He just does not know how to show it." As if love were a skill he had not been trained in, rather than a choice he was refusing to make. Denise made the silence tolerable, which is another way of saying she made it possible to stay. Kirk was 3 years younger and born without a target on his back. He played football. He went to a state university Frank could brag about at the VFW. He drove the truck Frank co-signed. He lived at home at 25 with no rent, no chores, and no questions. Kirk was the child who stayed, and in the Caldwell house, staying was the only currency that mattered. When I moved out at 24, Frank did not say goodbye. He said, "You will be back." Denise said, "Call us when you need money." Kirk said nothing. He was eating cereal at the counter and did not look up from his phone. Nobody believed I could stand on my own, and for 4 years, I let that silence be my answer. I paid my own rent, I built my own career, I saved my own money. And every Sunday I drove to Winslow Drive for dinner and sat through the questions about when I was coming home, as if leaving were a wound I had given them and staying away were the infection. The ceramic house was still on the hallway shelf at Winslow Drive. Every Sunday dinner for 4 years, I had walked past it, touched the glaze with one finger, and kept walking to the kitchen. That glow of the painted door under the hall light was Clara's voice, proof that someone in my family had once believed I was going to be fine. Maxine found me on her porch at 9:30 that Monday night. She did not ask what happened. She looked at the garbage bags in my trunk, looked at my face, and said, "Guest room is made up. We will sort this out in the morning." That is who Maxine is, the woman who sees the problem and opens the door at the same time. 3 years earlier, when I was still a junior processor making mistakes on HUD-1 forms, Maxine sat me down after a closing went sideways and said, "You are good at this, Ivy. The numbers trust you. Stop apologizing for being right." Nobody in my family had ever said anything like that. My father called my work pushing paper. My mother called it counting other people's money. Maxine called it a career and paid me accordingly. Tuesday morning, I drove to First National. The branch manager, Terry Bowen, pulled up my account. The freeze had been placed 13 days earlier. A suspicious activity hold, filed by Frank Caldwell and Denise Caldwell, co-account holders, claiming they had reason to believe the account was being accessed without the primary holder's knowledge. "The primary holder is me," I said. "Under the joint account agreement, any co-holder can request a review hold," Terry said. "We are required to process it." "And the balance? $47,000. "Can you show me the withdrawal history for the past 6 years? Terry printed 19 pages. The stack sat on the passenger seat of my car, the same way evidence sits on a desk before it becomes a weapon. Maxine closed the office early that afternoon. She made 2 cups of coffee, set one on the table in front of me, and sat down across from me with the other. She did not speak while I went through the pages. Maxine understands paper the way surgeons understand X-rays. She knew what the pages would say before I finished reading them, because she had seen this pattern before in title disputes and divorce proceedings. Money leaves slowly when someone does not want you to notice. 6 years of withdrawals I never made. Small amounts, spaced out, never large enough to trigger a fraud alert, never close enough together to form a visible pattern unless you put all the pages side by side on a kitchen table and drew a line through the dates. $200 in March 2020. $400 in July 2021, $350 in September 2021, $1,100 in December 2021, $800 in February 2022 and December 2022, $450 in April 2023, $1,100 in December 2023. And on, withdrawal after withdrawal, each one signed by either Frank Caldwell or Denise Caldwell, each one processed by a teller who had no reason to question a co-account holder accessing a joint account. $23,412. Gone, withdrawn by my parents using access they set up when I was in high school, from an account funded entirely by my direct deposit. Every paycheck from Lakewood Title had fed that account. Every withdrawal had fed my parents' kitchen, my brother's loans, and the second mortgage I did not know existed. Maxine looked at the last page and said, "This is not carelessness, Ivy. This is a schedule." She was right. The December withdrawals were $1,100 every year, the exact amount of the annual homeowner's insurance premium on 1847 Winslow Drive. My parents had been paying their insurance with my money. They had calendared it. I almost threw the papers across the room. My arm was back, the pages fanned in my fist, and the throw was loaded. But the ceramic house flashed behind my eyes. Grandmother Clara's voice. "One day you will have your own walls. And walls are not built by throwing things. Walls are built by stacking evidence until the structure holds." If you have been through something like this, make sure you are subscribed to Karma Unfolded. Turn on notifications, because the next part of this story is where everything changes. Wednesday morning, I called Perry Schaffer, real estate and consumer fraud attorney. Perry had handled a title dispute for Lakewood 2 years earlier, and Maxine trusted him with her own contracts. He heard the facts. He said 3 things. First, the lockout is illegal. Your lease was current. Sal Benedetto changed your locks without a court order. That is an unlawful lockout. And he faces civil liability and potential loss of his property management license. I will file a complaint this week. Second, the unauthorized withdrawals. Over $23,000 taken from a jointly held account without your knowledge or consent. We can file a consumer fraud complaint with the State Banking Commission and pursue a civil recovery action against your parents. Third, the freeze itself. Your parents used their co-signer status to place a hold on an account funded exclusively by your income. The bank should have contacted you before processing it. I will send a letter to First National requesting immediate release and removal of your parents from the account. 3 mechanisms, 3 filings, 3 consequences. But I was not done looking. Because when you trace money for a living, the question is never just where it went. The question is why. Why did my parents need over $23,000? Why did they freeze my account now after 6 years of quiet skimming? Why did they spend $1,500 to change locks on an apartment they did not own? That is over $24,000 in theft and bribes. People do not spend that kind of money on control alone. Control does not cost that much. Desperation does. Thursday afternoon, I sat at my desk at Lakewood and ran a title search on my parents' address. 1847 Winslow Drive. This is what I do 50 times a week. I pull county records, mortgage filings, lien attachments, and ownership chains. I read other families' financial histories the way a doctor reads charts. Normally, the houses are strangers' houses, numbers without faces. Today, the house was the one where I learned to ride a bike in the driveway and got grounded for staying out past curfew and sat through 9 years of Sunday dinners where my father corrected my posture and my mother translated his silence into love. The records told a story nobody in that house had told me. First mortgage, $142,000, originated 12 years ago. Current, paid on time. Second mortgage, $78,000, originated 3 years ago. Lender, Ridgeline Home Equity. Monthly payment, $1,800. 4 months delinquent. A notice of default had been filed 6 weeks ago. The foreclosure clock was running. My father, the man who supervised a factory floor and ran his home like a shift schedule, had borrowed $78,000 against the house he raised his children in. The loan documents listed the purpose as debt consolidation. When I cross-referenced the date with Kirk's student loan servicer records that Perry pulled the next day, the math was as clean as a closing statement. Kirk's student loans, $62,000. 4 years at a state university with room and board, plus 2 semesters of summer classes he never mentioned. Kirk's truck, $14,000, purchased the same month the second mortgage funded. Total, $76,000 of the $78,000. My parents had mortgaged their house to fund my brother's education and his transportation. And now, the payments were eating them alive. $1,800 a month on top of the first mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes, the insurance that my stolen $1,100 every December had been covering. All of it on a retired factory supervisor's pension and a part-time church secretary's salary that together did not cover what they owed. They did not lock me out because I was disobedient. They locked me out because they needed me back in that house, paying rent, covering bills, filling the gap between their income and the second mortgage that Kirk's education and Kirk's truck had created. My savings account, the one they had been skimming for 6 years, was supposed to be the bridge. When they froze it, they thought they were seizing the bridge. What they were seizing was evidence. Homelessness will make you obedient was not a philosophy. It was a business plan. Concrete floors raise better children was not parenting. It was a ransom note. I almost called my father that night. My thumb hovered over his name for 11 seconds, but the number on the screen was the same number that had texted Concrete Floors Raise Better Children 1 week earlier, and calling that number would be asking permission to be angry. Anger does not ask. Anger files. Friday morning, Maxine walked into my office and set a printout on my desk, a listing sheet. 1614 Birch Lane. 3-bedroom bungalow, 1,400 square feet, built in 1962. Hardwood floors, original fireplace, detached garage, foreclosure sale. List price, $112,000. We are handling this closing, Maxine said. Bank owned, no chain, clean title. The appraisal came in yesterday at $148,000. If someone had cash and a pre-approval, this could close in a week. She looked at me. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. The house had been sitting on the market for 41 days. 2 previous offers had fallen through, one over financing and one over an inspection report the buyer got cold feet about. The bank that owned it wanted the property off their books. They would accept a clean offer with proof of funds and close as fast as the title work allowed. And the title work was already done, because Lakewood had prepared it for the first 2 offers that collapsed. My brokerage account at Fidelity held $78,000. 3 years of automatic transfers from the paycheck my parents never knew the full amount of. They saw the savings account at First National growing to $47,000 and thought that was everything. They never asked about the rest because they never imagined their paper-pushing daughter had a rest. They never imagined it because Frank had spent 28 years telling me that everything I earned belonged to the family, and it never occurred to him that I might have stopped believing it. Perry connected me with a mortgage broker who ran the numbers Friday afternoon. $78,000 down on a $112,000 purchase. Mortgage of $34,000. Monthly payment $287, including taxes and insurance. My rent at Mill Street had been $850. The math did not just work. The math smiled. The pre-approval came back Saturday morning. The offer went in Saturday afternoon. The bank accepted Monday at 10 a.m. Maxine handled the escrow herself, because an employee buying a property through their own company means the employee steps away from the file entirely. Maxine ran the title search, prepared the closing disclosure, coordinated with the bank's asset manager, and booked the notary. My name appeared on the deed, not on any of the processing documents. The deed was recorded at 3:47 p.m. by 4 p.m. On a Monday afternoon, 7 days after I stood on a curb looking at garbage bags in the rain, I had a house. My name on the deed, my signature on the closing documents, my key in my hand, the key to a door that only one name could lock. But there was one more thing I needed, and it was sitting on a shelf at 1847 Winslow Drive. I drove to my parents' house at 6:30 that evening. The porch light was on. Kirk's truck was in the driveway. My mother's car was parked behind it. The kitchen window glowed yellow, and through it I could see the table where I had eaten 9,000 meals and heard 9,000 corrections about my posture, my grades, my weight, my choices, my voice. The front door was unlocked. It always was. Because Frank Caldwell believed his house was a fortress and nobody would dare enter without his permission. The ceramic house was on the shelf in the hallway, right where I left it 4 years ago, the day I moved to Mill Street. My mother had never moved it. She had dusted around it, the way you dust around something you cannot throw away but refuse to acknowledge. I walked to the shelf. My hand closed around the ceramic house. The glaze was cool under my fingers. Put that down. My mother's voice came from the kitchen doorway. She was holding a dish towel. Kirk was behind her, leaning against the refrigerator. Frank was at the table with his reading glasses on, the newspaper open to a page he was not reading. "This is mine, Mom. Nothing in this house is yours. You gave up your claim to anything here when you walked out." I set the ceramic house on the kitchen counter, not because she told me to, because I needed both hands free for what was coming next. I did not walk out. You locked me out. You froze my bank account. You paid Sal Benedetto $1,500 in cash to change the locks on my apartment while I was at work. We did what any parent would do for a child who refuses to come home. She set the dish towel on the counter. You live alone in a rented box pushing paper across a desk. 28 years old, no husband, no children. Your grandmother felt sorry for you when she gave you that little house. It was not pride, Ivy, it was pity, because she knew you would never have a real one. The words landed where they were aimed, at my chest, at the photo of Clara that was still in a garbage bag in Maxine's trunk, at every year I had spent proving that I could stand on my own, only to have the standing called a failure. Frank folded his newspaper. Your mother is right. This experiment of yours has gone on long enough. Move back in. Pay rent. Contribute like a family member. You can have the back room. Kirk smiled. Kirk always smiled when someone else was being corrected, because it meant the correction was not aimed at him. No, I said. Excuse me? Frank leaned forward. No, I am not moving back in. I am not paying rent here. I am not contributing to a household that stole $23,412 from my savings account over 6 years and then froze what was left. The kitchen went quiet. Frank's hand stopped on the newspaper. Denise's fingers tightened on the counter edge. I do not know what you are talking about, Frank said. Yes, you do, Dad. $200 in March 2020. $400 in July 2021. $1,100 every December like a bonus you were paying yourselves from my paycheck. 19 pages of withdrawals I never authorized. All made by co-account holders who used the access they set up when I was 16. That is $23,412. My attorney has the records. The State Banking Commission will have a copy by Friday. You are lying, Denise said from behind the counter. We never took a cent from that account. You took $1,100 last December, Mom. 3 days before Christmas, the same week you bought Kirk's snow tires and paid the plumber for the upstairs bathroom. I have the withdrawal slip. It has Dad's signature. The kitchen went completely still. Kirk shifted against the refrigerator. His eyes moved between his parents. Frank stood up. That money was family money. We put it in. We had a right to take it out. You did not put $1 in that account after I turned 18, Dad. Every deposit after 2016 came from my payroll at Lakewood Title. You can check. The bank already has. Kirk cleared his throat. Maybe you should just let it go, Ivy. It is not like you were using all of it. Kirk, the $62,000 in student loans that Dad took a second mortgage to pay off, that was my money too. Every withdrawal they made from my account went toward keeping you comfortable. You were 25, living rent-free, driving a $14,000 truck that Mom and Dad put on a second mortgage against this house, a mortgage they are 4 months behind on. So before you tell me to let it go, maybe ask yourself why your parents had to steal from their daughter to fund their son. Kirk's face changed. The casual lean against the refrigerator straightened into something rigid. He had not known about the second mortgage. He had not known about the delinquency. He had not known that the truck in the driveway was attached to a debt that was pulling the house under. Frank's face reddened from the collar up, the way it always did when the room stopped agreeing with him. I reached into my bag. I pulled out a single sheet of paper, a certified copy of a warranty deed, recorded that afternoon. Property address, 1614 Birch Lane. Grantee, Ivy Caldwell. Purchase price, $112,000. I set it on the kitchen table, on top of Frank's newspaper, face up. The room changed. Not the light, not the temperature, not the sound. The balance. Something in the air shifted the way pressure shifts before a weather front, and everyone in that kitchen felt it. 1 minute passed. My mother picked up the deed. She read it. Her lips moved over the address, over my name, over the purchase price. Her face went through something I had never seen before. The set jaw softened, the tight lips trembled. Her eyes filled, and the tears were not grief and they were not pride. They were the tears of a woman who just realized that the lock she put on her daughter's door did not lock her daughter in. It locked her out. Of everything. Of the money, of the obedience, of the future she had planned, where her daughter came home broken and grateful. Denise sat down in her chair and put both hands flat on the table and cried without making a sound. 3 minutes later, Frank picked up the deed. He held it at arm's length, the way he holds things when he does not want them to be true, the way he held the foreclosure notice last month. His hands shook. The paper rattled against his thumb. "What did you do?" he shouted. The shout hit the tile and bounced back. Kirk flinched. Denise did not look up. "What did you do, Ivy? Where did you get this money? Who gave you this?" "Nobody gave me anything, Dad. I earned it. I saved it in an account you did not know about because I learned a long time ago that any account with your name on it is not safe. I closed on that house today. My company handled the escrow. My boss handled the title search. My attorney handled the closing. The same attorney who is filing an illegal lockout complaint against Sal Benedetto and a consumer fraud report against you and Mom with the State Banking Commission." Frank's face did something it had never done in front of his family. His mouth opened and stayed open. His chin dropped. His hands, still holding the deed, lowered slowly until the paper touched the table. His shoulders, the shoulders of a man who had supervised 30 workers on a factory floor for 22 years, rounded forward like the frame had buckled. The color left his cheeks. He looked at Denise. Denise did not look back. She was still crying. She had not stopped since the first minute. "You said Grandma gave me that ceramic house out of pity," I said, and my voice did not waver. Grandma was the only one in this family who believed I would have my own walls. She was right. "Where are your walls, Dad?" 4 months behind on a $78,000 second mortgage you took out to cover Kirk's student loans and Kirk's truck. $1,800 a month you cannot make. A foreclosure notice filed 6 weeks ago. You did not lock me out because you wanted me to be obedient. You locked me out because you needed my money to save your house. The house you are losing because of the son who is standing right there, smiling. Kirk's smile was gone. He looked at his father. He looked at his mother. He looked at me. Then he looked at his shoes. "Here is what is over. Dad," the voice stayed flat. "The savings account, the co-signer access, the apartment I will never go back to, the calls I used to answer, the dinners I used to sit through, the corrections I used to swallow, all of it, done. Not because you locked me out, because you stole from me for 6 years and called it parenting. You froze my savings, changed my locks, called it parenting. Here is my deed, my name, my walls. Call it whatever you want." I picked up the ceramic house from where I had set it on the counter when Denise told me to put it down. I wrapped it in the dish towel, the one with the faded sunflower print that had hung from that oven handle since before Clara died. I put it in my bag. I walked out the kitchen door. Behind me, Frank's voice, softer now, smaller, "Okay. We went too far. We will unfreeze the account. Just come home. Move back in. We can be a family again. You can keep your little house and pay rent here too." The screen door closed. The porch steps creaked. The truck started in the driveway, and the headlights swept across the front of 1847 Winslow Drive, a house that was 4 months from belonging to a bank. I almost stopped the truck, not because of what Frank said, because of Denise. Because she was still sitting at that table with both hands flat and tears on her face, and some part of me, the part that was 9 years old and wanted her mother to say something kind, almost put the truck in park and walked back in. But the ceramic house was in the bag on the passenger seat, and Clara's voice was louder than Denise's silence. "Nobody gets to take the key." The truck left the driveway. It did not come back. Thursday, day 10. First National Credit Union. Perry Schaffer had sent the letter Monday. By Thursday, Terry Bowen had scheduled a meeting. She asked all account holders to be present. Frank and Denise sat on one side of Terry's desk. I sat on the other. Perry stood behind me with a folder. "Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell," Terry said, "we have completed a review of the suspicious activity hold you placed on this account. The hold was based on a claim that the account was being accessed without the primary holder's knowledge. Our records show that all deposits into this account since 2016 have come from Miss Caldwell's employer, Lakewood Title and Escrow. The withdrawals flagged in miss. Caldwell's complaint, totaling $23,412 over 6 years, were made using your co-signer access. That is family money, Frank said. We set that account up. We taught her to save. We have a right to that account. The account agreement grants access, Terry said, but not ownership of funds deposited by another party. Effective today, co-signer access has been revoked per Ms. Caldwell's written request. The hold has been lifted. The balance of $47,000 is available to Miss Caldwell immediately. This is robbery, Frank said, louder now. You are letting my own daughter rob her family. Mr. Caldwell, I need to ask you to lower your voice. I will not lower my voice in a bank that is stealing from me. 2 tellers behind the counter stopped what they were doing. A customer in the waiting area turned his head. Terry pressed a button under her desk. Mr. Caldwell, security has been notified. If you cannot lower your voice, I will have to ask you to leave. Frank stood up. His chair scraped the floor. Denise reached for his arm. He pulled it away. He looked at me across the desk, and in his eyes was something beyond anger. It was the look of a man who has just discovered that the child he built a cage for learned how to pick the lock from the inside and walked out carrying the blueprints. He had spent 28 years believing that control was the same thing as love, and the bank officer had just shown him the difference on a 19-page printout. You will regret this, Frank said, not to me, to the room, to the air, to whoever was listening. Nobody was listening. The tellers had gone back to their screens. The customer had left. Terry was closing the folder. And Denise was signing the form that removed her name from the account, her hand trembling on every letter, the pen moving so slowly it looked like she was writing underwater. Security walked Frank to the lobby door. He went without resisting, but he turned once and looked back at the desk where his daughter was sitting with her attorney. The look lasted 3 seconds. Then the glass door closed between them, and the lobby swallowed him. If this story stayed with you, make sure you are subscribed to Karma Unfolded. Share it with someone who has been the quiet one in their family. Because sometimes the quiet ones are not quiet because they have nothing to say. They are quiet because they are planning. The fallout came in 3 layers, and every one of them was a scene someone witnessed. The financial layer hit within the week. Perry filed the illegal lockout complaint against Sal Benedetto with the State Housing Authority. The complaint documented the $1,500 cash bribe, the absence of any court order, and the fact that my lease had been current with 0 missed payments in 4 years. Sal's property management license was suspended pending review. He was required to return the $1,500 bribe and pay relocation costs of $3,200, the full security deposit owed under the lease. Sal did not fight it. He wrote the check within 10 days, the speed of a man who knows what he did and wants the paperwork to stop. The tenants at 412 Mill Street received a letter from the building's owner. A different management company would be handling their accounts going forward. Sal's name was removed from the mailbox by Friday. The consumer fraud complaint against Frank and Denise landed at the Banking Commission the following week. An investigator was assigned. The $23,412 in unauthorized withdrawals was documented and flagged. Frank retained a lawyer whose retainer was $5,000, money he did not have, pulled from the same pension that was already failing to cover the second mortgage. The investigation remained ongoing through September. Frank stopped answering calls from numbers he did not recognize. Denise stopped going to First National entirely. She opened a new account at a different bank across town, as if the building itself were the problem and not the signatures on the forms inside it. The social layer arrived through the channels small towns use instead of newspapers. Terry Bowen did not gossip, but the customer in the waiting area who watched Frank Caldwell get escorted out of First National by a security guard was married to a woman who volunteered alongside Denise at the church office. By Sunday, the story was in 3 text chains. Nobody confronted Denise directly. That is not how it works in a town where everyone knows everyone. Instead, the invitation slowed. The committee emails stopped including her name. The pastor called and asked if she wanted to take some time, and the way he said it made it clear the suggestion was not optional. Denise stopped volunteering at the church reception desk. She stayed home on Sundays for the first time in 19 years. Frank did not notice because Frank had stopped leaving the house for anything other than groceries. Kirk moved out of the Caldwell house 12 days after the kitchen confrontation. He did not move far. A friend's apartment on the east side, a one-bedroom with a pull-out couch, and a parking spot that barely fit the truck. He did not call me. He did not call Frank. He packed 2 bags and left his key on the kitchen counter, next to the foreclosure notice that had arrived that morning in a certified envelope Kirk had signed for without reading. The truck he drove away in was the one his parents had mortgaged their house to buy, and neither the truck nor the son was coming back to help make the payments. The emotional layer is the one I think about on certain evenings. 3 weeks after the bank, Maxine told me she had driven past Winslow Drive on her way to a closing. She said the porch light was off in the middle of the afternoon. The lawn had not been mowed in what looked like 3 weeks. Denise's car was in the driveway, but the curtains were drawn at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. The house looked occupied the way a waiting room is occupied. People inside, but nobody living, nobody making noise, nobody opening windows. The shelf in the hallway where the ceramic house had sat for 4 years now showed a clean rectangle of light wood surrounded by dust. The outline of something that had been there and was not anymore. Denise had not dusted since the night her daughter took it. She had not touched the shelf at all. The rectangle was a wound in the shape of a small house, and she walked past it every morning without looking down. It is September now. The second mortgage hearing is scheduled for October. Frank has not made a payment since May. The house at 1847 Winslow Drive is worth roughly $285,000, but the combined mortgages total $196,000, and climbing with fees and penalties. The numbers are not complicated, they are just heavy, and the daughter who used to carry them is no longer answering the phone. Denise deleted her Facebook account the week after the bank incident. Kirk's truck sits at his friend's apartment with a quarter tank of gas and no plan for what comes next. Frank calls the house phone at Birch Lane once a week, every Sunday at 6 p.m., the same time dinner used to start at Winslow Drive. The phone rings 4 times and goes to voicemail. He does not leave a message. He has not left a message in 5 weeks, but he calls every Sunday at the same time. Because Frank Caldwell has always believed in schedules, even when the schedule has stopped making sense. 1614 Birch Lane has hardwood floors that creak in the hallway and a fireplace that works. The previous owner left nothing behind except clean walls and a mailbox with a dent in the door. There is no furniture in the living room yet. There is a tape measure on the floor stretched along the south wall because a bookshelf is being planned. The bookshelf will be built by hand, not because it is cheaper, but because the woman who lives here wants to know that every shelf in her house was measured, cut, and placed by someone who chose to be here. On the mantel above the fireplace, a small ceramic house, hand-painted. The glaze is cool in the morning and warm by afternoon. The late light through the west window hits the tiny painted door, and for a few minutes each evening, the door glows. The front door key hangs on a small brass hook. The hook was unscrewed from the wall at 412 Mill Street before Sal could throw it away. It holds a new key now, a key to a door that cannot be locked by anyone else. The phone is on the floor next to the tape measure, screen dark, not silenced, not face down, just not needed. Clara was right, the walls are mine, and nobody gets to take the key.